You've already seen a little bit of this, but let's get weird. I'm honored to be here. John swears when he told me he thought I'd be perfect to talk about weird, he meant it as a compliment. I'll go along with that. But actually, weird is a perfect topic for me to address because I love weird. I find weird interesting, and I made a lot of weird choices in my life. As John mentioned just a few weeks ago, I made the weird choice of leaving one of the best jobs I've ever had. For the past 5 years, I ran digital media and marketing for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the organization behind the Oscars. I loved it, but recently left to become a digital marketing consultant. I wanted the opportunity to work on new projects and have new adventures. This is one of them. Speaking of which, if any of you have some adventures you could use help with, please let me know afterwards. I can't promise to help you break Twitter like we did with the Ellen selfie, but you never know. I recognize that my decision to leave the academy and become a consultant can easily be considered a weird choice. But I found weird choices often turn out to be great choices. That's what I want to talk about today, how making weird choices can be good for you and why you should make more of them. Because I'm an internet guy, I've given this talk a clickbaity title. Whoops. 4 reasons to make weird choices. Don't let that image fool you. This isn't going to be a sex talk. That image and all the images you'll see today are things I found when I did a Google image search for the word weird. Like this. Reason number 1 that you should make weird choices. It's only weird because it pays less. Often the choices we perceive as being weird are only considered weird for financial reasons. And making decisions solely based on money is the easiest way to wind up unhappy. About 10 years into my career, I reached an interesting crossroads. A series of PR and marketing jobs had led me to a role as a marketing writer for a movie studio. But on the side, I got deep into internet culture, blogging, and producing comedy shows. Speaking of weird choices, the first comedy shows I produced were with High Times Magazine and porn stars. But that's a story for another day. You can, however, Google porn star carpool, and you'll see some interesting things. Anyway, I promise this would not be a sex talk. I wound up somehow landing 2 very different job offers. The first offer was from Disney to work as a marketing writer for their movie division. It would have nearly doubled the salary I was making at the time. The other job offer was from a startup comedy website who would hire me as a blogger and pay me less than my current job. The startup only had 3 months worth of money left in the bank, so there was also a good chance if I chose that job, I'd be out of work in a couple months. Even the guy who offered me the job tried to talk me out of taking the job. I think he felt bad offering a job that was likely to go away almost as soon as it was accepted. But I took the comedy job. I made the weird choice. I figured, why spend my days writing boring press releases when I could instead spend them writing think pieces, like a breakdown of the world's 10 most bizarre toilet paper ads. You can Google that, but it won't come up because, shockingly, the site has been wiped from the memory of the internet. So you'll just have to trust me, they were really bizarre. I also realized the comedy job was only a weird choice if you judged it purely on salary and job security. It was actually in perfect alignment with my passions. It was more creative, more fun, more independent, offered the chance for me to learn more, and presented an opportunity to shift the trajectory of my career. The only reason the comedy job seemed like a weird choice was because it paid less. I think that's the case with many career choices we face. Making the weird choice turned out to be the best thing for me. While the startup didn't ultimately succeed, it hung around for a couple years, and I found myself rapidly promoted from a blogger into my first real leadership role. I had an incredible opportunity to develop the skills that have fueled the success I've been lucky to have ever since. It was a real turning point for my career. You have to recognize why something's a weird choice and understand what other people may consider weird isn't necessarily weird for you. It's quite likely the logical choice for you. And don't be fooled by a paycheck. Reason number 2, weird is a competitive advantage. The second reason to make weird choices is because weird can be a huge competitive advantage. Most things considered weird are considered that because they're not what many or any other people are doing. But that's not a reason to avoid them. It's a reason to pursue them, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship and business. After the startup I worked at flamed out, I decided to launch my own consulting company. I felt I had picked up a lot of skills over the years and believed, or at least hoped, there were people out there who could benefit from them. But my chosen path of consulting was a weird one, to say the least. I decided to become a digital marketing consultant for comedians. For those of you who don't know much about how the comedy business works, let me give you some context. Here's a video that gives you a taste of the life of an up-and-coming comedian, also known as my target clientele.
How may I help you?
I'm a stand-up comic, and I would like to get booked for your club.
Great. I have a spot open a week from Wednesday.
Awesome. I'll take it. How much does it pay?
No, there will be no money. It is an open mic. You will be required to bring 10 people, each of which will be required to pay a cover charge to watch amateur comics perform. They will then be required to purchase 2 extremely overpriced drinks from the bar.
Great. That sounds fair. And how much time will I get?
You will get 5 minutes. There will be a list of over 20 comics performing. Depending on how many people you bring will determine which slot you receive. If you do well and bring the most people, we will place you at the end and force your friends to sit through the entire show. If you bring less than 10 people, then you will not go on, and your friends will have to sit through the show anyway, even though the one they came to see will not be performing.
Great. That sounds fair.
Your friends will be encouraged to fill out comment cards under the auspice that if they put your name under their favorite comic line, the club will book you for future gigs. But this is a fallacy. The truth is we want the comment cards filled out so we can get your friend's email address and phone number. We will then promptly bombard them with marketing calls and emails offering them tickets to comics they will have most likely never heard of, nor want to see.
Great, that sounds fair. So after the open mic, then I can get a paid gig?
No.
So that goes on for about another 2 or 3 minutes. It's actually really funny, but we have limited time, so I thought I'd just give you a taste. And to be clear, so the comic was my target client, not the club, which probably would have been a better business. But my plan was to get up-and-coming comics who have no money to hire me to teach them how to do marketing, which is a thing they despise, even though I had never actually been a comedian or a consultant myself. It was a weird business plan. It was also a service that didn't exist. Literally nobody else was a comedy marketing consultant. Comics might pay somebody to teach them how to tell jokes, but nobody was selling advice about how to grow a fan base or use social media to further their career. Keep in mind, this was in 2010, a time when most comics were still skeptical about whether or not social media even mattered. They were still trying to wrap their heads around all the MySpace friends that they had lost. So in that environment, I launched Connected Comedy, a blog where I shared marketing advice that I hoped would attract comedians who I could then somehow convince to hire me. It was a weird plan, but it worked really well. It blossomed into a huge community of more than 20,000 comics, got me a bunch of clients, and I even wound up selling ebooks and memberships to a paid content section of the site. There are several reasons why it was successful, but one of the biggest is that it was weird. Because nobody else was doing it, I had no competition. I got to play my own weird game and carve out my own weird space. Being weird was my competitive advantage. And I think it's true of anything you do. Not to sound too Steve Jobs-ish, but the weird ones stand out. The weird ones get noticed. The weird ones attract fans. Being weird can be your greatest strength. Certainly was for Connected Comedy. Reason number 3, the weird is more valuable than the expected. When it comes to work, here's what interests me. Innovation, technology, forward thinking, disruption, social media, experimentation, and generally finding new ways to communicate with people. You would think those interests would lead me to work for a tech company or social platform like Facebook or Twitter. But my most successful job came at the Academy, a place nothing like those environments. Somehow, my interest in all that future-building stuff landed me at a 100-year-old organization that had no digital media department when I was hired to build one there 5 years ago. While the job itself covered many things that interest me, the place I chose to take my skills was a weird choice. But here's what I discovered in my time there. A skill set and view of the world that's considered normal in some environments can be considered weird in others. And it turns out it can be more valuable and impactful in the environments in which it's weird. Most people that worked at the Academy, especially when I started there, didn't see the world the way I saw it. My views about media, culture, and the Academy's role in it were different than many of my coworkers. In that environment, my ideas were weird. It's unlikely this would have been the case at a newer tech company. There, everybody I worked with would have shared my viewpoints, echoed my ideas, and I would have fit right in with the company culture. While that wasn't the case at the Academy, and there were certainly moments that were more challenging because of it, the end result was I was able to make a much bigger impact than I would have at a company where my approach would have been the norm. I was also able to benefit and learn from people at the Academy who saw the world differently from me. Another opportunity I wouldn't have had if I worked at a kind of place you would expect somebody like me to work at. Combining my quote-unquote weird viewpoint and skill set with a quote-unquote traditional environment turned out to be incredibly valuable and successful. The Academy has become a real leader in social media with a unique brand and rapidly growing fan base. We went from 400,000 social followers to 10 million in under 5 years. That success speaks to the connection the organization has built with fans and the value it provides its audience. I believe this happened in large part because I was a weird fit for the organization. And we did it by making weird and unexpected choices with our social strategy. Here's an example. In 2013, as part of our Oscars promotional campaign, we sent a couple comedians and an Oscar on a month-long road trip across the country, popping up in all kinds of unexpected locations and letting fans guide the way on social media. That campaign was counter to everything people expect about the Academy. It's a huge success in large part because it was weird. Sometimes weird works. Fourth reason you should choose weird. Weird choices create unique opportunities. To bring this full circle a bit, I'd like to share the story of how I wound up here today telling you to make weird choices. John touched on it a little bit earlier. My path began with a weird choice I made a year ago to launch a blog called The Person You Should Know. The concept was simple. Each day I profiled a creative person who shared their expertise online with a series of links to their work. At its core, it came from my belief that who you know influences who you become. While starting a blog may not seem weird to you, here's why I think it was. I had no reason to start it other than curiosity. Wasn't a business, had no monetization plan, wasn't directly related to my career, wasn't even going to help my personal brand, whatever that is, because all I did on it was feature other people. Plus, featuring a new person every day was a lot of work. I even spent money on Facebook ads to build an audience for it because I thought it'd be more fun to have 100 readers than 10. I was doing all of this with no real justification for doing so or a clear goal for the project. That's a weird choice, but I did it and stuck with it. A few weeks into it, I featured Tina Roth-Eisenberg, who you may know is the founder of CreativeMornings. I didn't know Tina personally, but had admired her work for years, and she was just the kind of person I wanted to feature on the site. I was shocked when she saw I had featured her and expressed her love for the site and shared her with her followers. By the way, she has a lot of followers, and they're all great. Maybe not all, but the ones that have interacted with me. I was thrilled. It led a bunch of people to discover what I was doing and really grew the audience for the project almost overnight. On a side note, when you see others doing weird things that you enjoy, give them a like, a share, an email, some kind of encouragement. You'll be amazed at how much it can mean to them in the future of their weird project. You probably think I'm going to say she then reached out to me and that's how I wound up here today, but that's not how this happened. Because it usually takes more than one weird choice to get you where you're going. I went on to profile more than 200 people on A Person You Should Know over the course of the year, and I still continue to profile people today. Always without any clear plan of why I was doing it. But I learned a ton from profiling these people. The site built a following of thousands of readers, and I even wound up having an occasional interaction or two with the people I profiled. Not a bad result from a weird choice. Then a couple months ago, I made another weird choice. I started to write more on Medium, which I highly recommend, by the way. Again, I had no clear goal for what I was writing, but just felt like something interesting might come of it. In May, I wrote a piece about what I think people don't understand about Los Angeles. It didn't go viral, but it did turn out to be kind of polarizing, as readers seemed to either love it or hate it, which I found interesting. Kind of like Los Angeles. Then a couple months after I published it, I got an email from John, who I had never met. I had never been to one of these events, although I've watched tons of Creative Mornings videos online and would feature him all the time in my Person You Should Know posts. But John had become aware of me through my Person You Should Know project and become a fan. Then he had come across my other writings, seen the Los Angeles Post, and thought it might make a great subject for a talk at Creative Mornings about the theme of weird. That's how I wound up here today. It's the result of a weird choice I made a year ago to start a blog profiling people, and a weird choice I made several months ago to write a post about Los Angeles for no apparent reason. I accepted John's offer to speak today, but suggested an alternate topic to fit the weird theme, because again, I make weird choices. And here we are. Weird choices deliver compound interest. When you stack them on top of each other, they create opportunities you never saw coming, just like I never saw this one coming. When you follow a normal path, you have some idea of where you're headed. If you go to medical school and finish it, you'll likely wind up as a doctor. But when you follow a weird path, interesting and surprising things can and usually do happen. For me, one of those things has been standing up here at 8 in the morning, telling 100 people I've never met before why they should do weirder things with their life. I have no idea what this weird decision will lead to, but I can't wait to find out. And if any of you'd like some help making your next weird choice successful, I'm available. After all, now I'm a consultant. Thank you.